The floorboards in 1980 were cold against his knees. He pushed a heavy wooden block across the grain of the wood, the sound, a dull, rhythmic scrape that filled the room. There were no lights blinking, no hum of a cooling fan, no tether to a network. He stacked another block, the edges sharp and solid under his palms. He didn't need to look up to know the space around him was empty of data. A rotary phone sat mounted on the wall, its coiled cord hanging like a dormant vine. It was the only way to reach the outside world, and it required effort, a physical turn of the dial, a wait for the mechanical return. He pushed the tower of blocks over. They hit the floor with a series of distinct, heavy thuds. Silence followed, absolute and thick. He sat there, hands resting on the grain of the wood, listening to the dust motes settle in the quiet. The world was small, tangible, and perfectly still. He reached out and touched the cold plastic of the phone receiver,
not to use it, but just to know it was there.
This was the pulse of his reality, slow, physical, and entirely contained within the four walls of the room.
44 years later, the silence is gone. The subway car screams on metal tracks,
a high-pitched metallic grind that vibrates through the soles of his shoes. He stands in the center of the aisle, gripping a cold, steel pole. Around him, the air is thick with a different kind of static. Every face is tilted downward, illuminated by the pale, artificial glow of handheld screens. Thumbs move in a frantic, rhythmic dance against glass, scrolling, tapping, swiping through infinite feeds. Not a single person looks up. Not a single person makes eye contact. The proximity is suffocating, yet the distance between these bodies is absolute. He tries to catch a glance, a flicker of awareness, but finds only the backs of heads and the glare of reflections. He shifts his weight,
the movement unnatural in the cramped space. He feels the weight of the memory of that quiet room.
The blocks, the rotary phone. Here, in this crowded, glowing metal tube, he is a ghost. A cold, sharp realization settles in his chest. He is surrounded by a world that has forgotten how to look at anything that does not emit a signal. He is present, yet he is entirely invisible. The disconnect is not an accident. It is a defining trait of a generation caught in the transition. He is a Xennial. The term acts as a bridge, spanning the chasm between the world of the rotary phone and the world of the smartphone. He belongs to the cohort born between 1976 and 1985, a group defined by a unique, singular burden. They are the final generation to remember the world before the internet arrived. Yet they are the first to be forced into mastering it. This is a cognitive fault line. He remembers the patience required to exist in a space without constant connectivity, the slow pace of life before data became an infinite, streaming current. He stands in the subway, observing the digital natives who have never known a reality that was not logged, tracked, or connected. He feels the weight of that memory. It is a private archive of a slower, tactile existence that no longer holds currency in the modern economy. He is the last witness to the analog era. He carries the ghost of that time in his mind while his hands perform the tasks of the digital age. This is the core of his isolation. He is the bridge, and the bridge is always pulled in two directions at once.
The friction starts with the silence. He remembers the library of his youth, the smell of dust on paper,
the soft scrape of wooden chairs on linoleum, the deliberate, slow pace of searching through card catalogs. Information had weight then. It required movement, touch, and significant time to locate. Now, the brain operates in a roar of infinite,
uncurated data. He sits at his desk, staring at a screen that refreshes every millisecond with new demands, new notifications, and new streams of noise. The contrast creates a persistent, low-grade headache.
His mind reaches for that old, quiet stillness, looking for a single thread of focus,
but the digital environment demands a constant,
fractured attention. He tries to synthesize complex ideas, yet the machine pulses with the need for immediate,
shallow responses. It is a war between the hardware of his biology and the software of the modern world.
He feels his thought processes stutter. The brain is trying to reconcile two different realities, one where knowledge was earned through silence,
And one where information is forced upon him through constant,
high-frequency intrusion. This is not just multitasking. It is a fundamental cognitive dissonance that leaves him feeling perpetually exhausted.
as if he is trying to run two different operating systems at the exact same time.
He remembers the radio. He remembers sitting on the floor for hours, thumb hovering over the record button of a bulky tape deck,
waiting for the one song that defined his week to play. It was a ritual of anticipation.
He had to listen, to wait, to endure the commercials and the DJ chatter.
Solely for the chance to capture that 3-minute sequence on magnetic tape. If he missed the start, the recording was flawed. If the DJ spoke over the fade-out, the song was ruined. That frustration was a form of discipline. Now,
he pulls his phone from his pocket. He taps a screen. The song begins instantly. There is no waiting. There is no risk. There is no effort. He watches the progress bar glide across the interface, but the music feels hollow.
It is too easy. He misses the physical tension of the tape deck, the mechanical click of the keys,
the way the plastic spool turned in the dark. That era demanded he earn his entertainment. Today,
he is drowning in an ocean of instant content. Yet he finds himself starving for the satisfaction of a song he had to wait for, record, and preserve himself. The convenience of modern streaming has stripped the music of its weight,
leaving him nostalgic for the days when time was a currency he spent to hear a melody. The morning begins with a cascade of pings. Slack notifications, Zoom invites, and email chains stretch across time zones, pulling him into a digital orbit that never stops spinning. He manages teams from Tokyo to London. He is a master of this virtual architecture. Yet, midway through a high-stakes call, his hand drifts away from the mouse. He stares at the smooth, cold surface of his desk. He feels a sudden, sharp craving for the weight of a physical ledger, or the rough texture of a wooden pencil. He needs to hold something that does not require electricity to exist. He looks at his colleagues on the screen, their faces pixelated and flat, and feels a hollow ache in his chest. He navigates the digital economy with precision, yet his blood pressure rises with every notification chime. His brain is built to process the slow, tactile reality of the analog past, but his career demands the rapid-fire, disconnected speed of the digital present. He closes his eyes for a second, trying to ground himself in the physical space of his office. But the screen glows brighter, pulling him back into the stream. He is winning the game, but he is losing the feeling of being present in the world. He sits in the boardroom, watching the divide unfold. On one side, the older executives discuss market share with a rigid, top-down authority that feels like a relic. On the other, the younger analysts talk in a rapid-fire dialect of trends and instant feedback that leaves him cold. He is the bridge between these two islands, yet he occupies neither. When he speaks, he uses the nuance of the old world, and the younger team glances at their phones, distracted by the delay. When he listens to the veterans, he hears a disregard for the digital tools he knows are essential. He is too young to command the respect of the architects of the past, and too old to share the seamless, screen-native intuition of the future. This is the psychological desert. He wanders through these meetings, a ghost in the middle ground, feeling the silence of his own obsolescence. There is no home for him here. The space between the generations is not a bridge. It is a vacuum. He reaches out to steady the conversation, but his hands find only air. He is a translator of languages that are rapidly losing their meaning, caught in a landscape where he does not belong. He carries the ghost of a different era into the office every morning. And show absolute loyalty, you will succeed. He treats every email like a letter that demands a thoughtful, measured response. He treats every project like a manual labor task that requires patience to complete. But the digital economy does not care about his endurance. It demands constant, 24-hour availability. The show up and grind mentality becomes a trap when the work never actually ends. He works through his lunch, stays past the sunset, and keeps his laptop open on his kitchen table. It is midnight, and his phone buzzes against the wood, a high-priority alert from a server halfway across the globe. He reaches for it, his movements mechanical, his mind screaming for a pause that never comes. He feels the friction, the grinding of his old-world values against the relentless, high-speed gears of the new. He is running a marathon on a treadmill that keeps accelerating. He wants to finish the race, but the finish line has been erased, replaced by an infinite, glowing loop of pings and demands.
The exhaustion is not from the labor itself, but from the inability to ever truly leave it. His pulse spikes every time the screen lights up, a Pavlovian trigger etched into his nervous system.
He stares at the inbox, hundreds of unread messages blinking like embers in the dark. He remembers when work stayed at the office, locked behind a heavy door. Now, the office is a permanent extension of his own home.
He tries to silence his phone, to reclaim 1 hour of disconnected silence.
But his fingers hesitate. He knows if he does not respond, the digital engine will simply move on without him, rendering his years of loyalty obsolete. This is the exploitation of his own diligence.
The system feeds on his desire to finish what he starts,
turning his reliability into a tether that keeps him chained to the grid. He sits on his sofa, the blue light of the tablet illuminating a face drained of color.
The dread is a slow, freezing current beneath his skin.
He is not just working. He is being hollowed out by the very tools he helped integrate into the world. There is no off switch for a generation that feels responsible for the entire, flickering machine. He steps into the conference room, a mediator between two worlds that no longer speak the same tongue. On one side, his superiors demand the patient, long-term loyalty of the analog era. They want plans that span years, not minutes. On the other, his team demands instant disruption, constant feedback, and the rapid-fire pace of a startup. Character. One stands at the whiteboard, marker in hand, feeling the cognitive weight of the divide. He starts to explain a strategy, but his words stall. He has to translate the concept of patience into the language of agile sprints without losing the essence of either. He pauses, his grip tightening on the marker until his knuckles turn white. The room waits. He reformulates his sentence, stripping away the nuance to fit the digital-first vocabulary of his team, then re-injects the old-school values of stability for the board. It is a constant, exhausting rotation of mental gears. His eyes burn from the effort of maintaining this dual reality. He is the bridge, and the bridge is beginning to fracture under the weight of the two sides pulling in opposite directions. He speaks, he translates, he resets. He is the only one in the room who understands both, and that makes him the only one who can never stop working. He walks through his front door, but the shift in location brings no shift in pressure. His phone vibrates, a call from his father struggling to attach a document to an email for the third time today. Character. One leans against the wall, eyes closed for a heartbeat, before he starts the familiar, step-by-step recitation of clicks and menus. He is the technical support for a generation that never asked for this change. While he talks his father through the interface, he watches his own child across the room, slumped over a tablet, eyes glazed by the rapid flicker of content. He hangs up, sets his phone down, and walks over to take the device away. He demands focus, eye contact, and a return to the physical world, knowing full well he is fighting a tide he helped create. He is the anchor in the middle of a shifting sea. His hands shake slightly as he sets the tablet aside. He feels the pull from his parents, tethered to the past, and the pull from his child, drifting into a future he cannot fully map. He is the only one who understands the language of both. He is the bridge, and he is holding it together with his own frayed nerves, waiting for a break that never comes.
Character 1 sits in the quiet of his living room, the glow of his smartphone casting a harsh light across his face.
He swipes upward. A video plays. A stranger meticulously staging a breakfast, filming every angle, checking the frame for maximum impact before taking a single bite. He swipes again. A teenager dances for a camera, repeating the same movement until it looks spontaneous. Character 1 pauses, his thumb hovering over the screen. This is a broadcast of the mundane, a public autopsy of private seconds.
He remembers when a camera was for capturing a memory, not for constructing a persona. He taps the screen,
navigating deep into the settings menu, and switches his own profile to private, then shuts the phone off. The screen goes black, reflecting only his own face in the dim room. He sets the device face down on the table,
as if it were a hot coal. The performative nature of these platforms creates a physical itch,
a rejection of the constant demand to be seen. He stands up, walks to the window, and looks out at the street. Real people pass by, unrecorded, unedited, and blissfully unaware of the cameras. He stays there, watching, preferring the silence of the unobserved world to the artificial noise in his palm. Character 1 opens his laptop. The screen illuminates, populating with a grid of faces from 3 different time zones. He speaks, and his voice projects clearly through the high-fidelity microphone. He guides the team, resolves a technical bottleneck, and executes the project tasks with precision. He is a master of this space, yet he pauses to watch the others. He sees them in static, compressed frames, pixelated and distant. He reaches out, his fingers brushing the cold glass of the monitor, meeting only the hard surface of the display. There is no warmth. There is no shared air. He stands up and walks to the kitchen, the silence of his apartment pressing against his ears. He looks at his reflection in the dark window, then back at the glowing grid of faces on his desk. He realizes the irony. He has built a life where he can be everywhere at once, yet he is physically alone in every single one of those places. The duality is no longer a professional asset. It is a wall. He grips the edge of the counter until his knuckles turn white, the reality of his isolation finally outweighing the convenience of his digital control. Character 1 stares at the cascading lines of code on his primary terminal. This is the architecture he spent 2 decades refining. Global networks, instant data exchange, and seamless connectivity. He traces the flow of information with his eyes, watching how the system reroutes traffic automatically. It is efficient. It is flawless. It is entirely indifferent to his existence. He types a command to override a process, but the system corrects his input before he hits enter, adjusting itself to a more optimized path. He pulls his hands away from the keyboard as if burned. The realization settles into the room with the hum of the cooling fans. He is the architect, yet the building no longer requires its builder. He stands and walks to the center of the office, his movements causing no ripple in the digital stream he helped create. He is a phantom in the circuitry, a remnant of a time when human hands were necessary to turn the gears. He watches the server lights blink in rhythmic, uncaring patterns. He is not a participant in this world. He is merely the ghost that haunts the infrastructure. He turns off the main switch, but the network remains active, pulsing with life, completely unaware that he has just walked away. Character 1 sits at his desk, staring at a blank document. He reaches for a manual he kept for 5 years,
but the software it describes was retired in an update last night. He drops the book.
It hits the floor with a hollow thud. His brain is a repository of outdated protocols, a library of obsolete languages.
He begins the process again. Open the new interface, map the buttons, memorize the shortcuts.
His pulse quickens. The room seems to tilt, a sudden, sharp vertigo that forces him to grip the desk edge.
He is not just working. He is constantly erasing what he knows to make room for what comes next.
It is a cycle of shedding skin, day after day. He remembers when a skill lasted a lifetime. Now, a skill lasts a fiscal quarter. He tries to focus on the screen, but the icons shift slightly.
The layout updated by an algorithm he does not control. He stands up to steady himself.
But the floor feels less solid than it did an hour ago. Every certainty is a temporary placeholder.
He is a master of adaptation, yet he is exhausted by the motion. He closes his eyes,
trying to find a fixed point in the room, but his mind is still recalibrating to a world that refuses to stay still. Character. One opens the bottom drawer of his desk. He searches for the physical map he used to keep there, the one with the coffee stains and handwritten shortcuts. He finds only a stack of outdated printouts and a broken charging cable. He pulls the map out, but the geography has changed. New roads bypass the landmarks he once knew by heart. He crumbles the paper and drops it. It does not land with the heavy finality of the past. He reaches for his phone. A blue dot pulses on a glowing screen, pinpointing his location with cold, mathematical precision. There is no need to read the stars or look for signs. The satellite decides the path. He remembers the library cards, the tactile process of searching through wooden drawers.
The smell of paper, the quiet labor of discovery. Now,
a search engine returns 1,000 results in a millisecond. But the reward feels hollow. The physical world is receding, replaced by a layer of shifting data that he cannot touch. He taps the screen to confirm his route. The map zooms out, blurring the world into abstract lines and numbers. He stands in the center of his office, but he feels untethered, floating in a sea of coordinates that offer him no sense of place. Character. One walks through the lobby of his office, surrounded by the hum of high-speed servers and the rapid tapping of keyboards. He is physically present in 2024, yet his mind is elsewhere.
He stops by a wall, his hand hovering over the plaster where a rotary phone used to hang in his childhood home.
His fingers find nothing but smooth, cold, dry wall. The sensation is sharp, a phantom limb pain for a world that has been dismantled. He stares at the people around him. They move with an ease he cannot replicate, perfectly synced to the digital pulse of the room. He feels like a guest in his own life, an observer watching a film he has already seen. When he walks, his gait is deliberate, heavy with the weight of memories the others do not possess.
He remembers the silence of a house before the constant ping of notifications. He tries to speak to a colleague,
but the words feel like translations from a dead language. He is a ghost haunting the corridors of the future, anchored to a past that exists only in his own synapses. He blinks, trying to focus on the task in front of him, but the edges of the present moment remain stubbornly thin and translucent. Character. One enters a crowded coffee shop. The air is thick with the sound of rapid-fire digital chatter and the sterile hum of white noise. He orders a drink, his movements slow and methodical. Beside him, another person stands, staring at a static wall rather than a screen. Their eyes meet. It is not a casual glance. It is a collision of history, character. One notices the way the stranger holds their coffee not as a prop for a social media photo, but as a source of simple heat. A thin, knowing smile passes between them. No words are exchanged, yet the silence speaks volumes. It is the immediate recognition of two people who remember the sound of a dial-up modem, the weight of a physical newspaper, and the patience required to wait for a film to be developed. For a heartbeat, the digital world falls away. The noise of the shop becomes a distant, irrelevant hum. They stand together in the eye of the storm, two ghosts who have found each other in the machine. It is a brief, intense anchor in a fragmented landscape. Then, the stranger turns and walks out. Character 1 is left alone again, but the weight of the loneliness has shifted. He knows he is not the only one holding the memory of the world that used to be. Character 1 watches the stranger disappear into the crowd. The realization settles into his chest, heavy and precise. He is part of the final generation to possess a dual consciousness. He knows the world as it was a place defined by physical constraints, tactile patience, and unrecorded time. He reaches into his pocket and touches his keys, feeling the jagged edges of the metal. It is a grounding sensation. He is not just an observer. He is a curator of a vanishing reality. The digital noise around him no longer feels like an assault, but like an environment he is uniquely equipped to navigate. He recognizes that his discomfort is actually a form of expertise. He is the last witness to the analog era, the final link in a chain that is rapidly dissolving. This acceptance brings a quiet, hardening resolve. There is no going back. Yet the value of what he carries remains undiminished. He stands taller, his shoulders losing their defensive hunch. He is a keeper of memories that are slowly becoming myths to those around him. He accepts the burden of this knowledge. It is a lonely truth, but it is his own, etched into his identity like a watermark on a fading map. Character 1 moves toward the exit of the station, stopping at the heavy steel door.
He places his hand against the cold metal, feeling the vibration of the city beyond.
He is positioned precisely in the doorway between two distinct eras. He holds the door open, his body acting as a hinge for everyone else to pass through. He sees them rushing past the digital natives, the builders,
the future all unaware of the threshold they cross. He feels the draft, a constant, chilling current of air that cuts through his thin layers.
It is the wind of progress, stripping away the quiet of the past. He does not step through. He does not turn back. He simply stands. His grip on the frame is firm, his muscles locked against the pressure of the crowd. He is the essential anchor, the only one who remembers the stillness behind him while witnessing the speed ahead. The light from outside floods the hall,
harsh and unrelenting. He remains in the shadow of the frame, shivering slightly as the cold air persists.
He is the gatekeeper of a lost silence, holding the path open until the very last memory of the analog world has finally passed into the machine. He is alone, but he is the only one who truly knows the way.